I told myself the day I saw the announcement for the ESO Online that I would do a weekly vlog about this, and I've been putting it off, Today I'm in the store. You know, I'm shopping for some eggnog, and then let's face it, anytime you're shopping for eggnog, you're having a pretty good fucking day. And as I'm walking down the aisle with the eggnog, I see that they have the new Samuel Adams holiday seasonal beers out, the 12 packs, and I freaking love those things. Now, to put a cherry on top of all of this, I'm getting home, I put this away, bam, I see the email, the Elder Scrolls release date announcement. I say, okay, now these stars align. Let's go ahead. Let's start our first weekly, with our first series of our weekly blog, with a beta review. But before we get into the gameplay review and to let me finish pouring this beer, I want to talk about that release date. This seems a little optimistic to me. April 2014. We just did the last beta, so we're talking about 4 months from now. There's been no mid-level beta testing, no end game, no PvP, and very little, if any, that I can find of the secondary skills like crafting. So I'm a little concerned here. Now, for perspective, I am a huge Elder Scrolls fan, but I'm not a fanboy. Bethesda will put out bugged content. Now, most Bethesda fans have overlooked this because they've always been very ambitious in what they're doing. Anytime you try and break new ground, I mean, there's going to be some missteps. So something to keep in mind in regards to my comments or other beta review comments that you might have heard in relation to the April release date. Oh, and due to the non-disclosure agreement, we are not going to be showing any video from the beta testing. Now, the ESO UI was often described as similar to the default interface, PC interface for Skyrim, and that is not a compliment. However, I actually did somewhat like the minimalistic style. Elder Scrolls has always had a very epic or very grand scale to the game, and you really don't want a lot of clutter in front of that. I would, however, have liked a mini-map. Maybe it's just I have a poor sense of direction, or maybe it's just because I'm always fucking hammered when I'm playing these games. But I really kind of found myself having to go back and forth into that map just to get some form of spatial relationship of where the fuck I was. And if that's not proof positive that Warcraft kills fucking brain cells, I don't know what is. One other thing I liked was the main map actually had some filters on it that would remove a lot of the clutter. And I found that pretty useful. That's unfortunately where really the train just leaves the tracks. Once you leave the main HUD, in order to do even some of the more common repetitive items, you're going to have to drill down into this ridiculous sub-menu system that was caused by the limitations of console controllers. Now, anybody who's been following Elder Scrolls Online knows that the console has become like the Jews of the Elder Scrolls community. No matter what negative thing happens, someone's irrationally going to go full fucking Mel Gibson and find a way to pull it out of their ass to blame it on the consoles. But there are going to be ongoing issues with the console controller in relation to this game, and these submenus are one of them that I don't see ever really going away. The thing I think, though, that may drive a bigger wedge between your PC gamer and your console gamer is your hotkey bar. Because they actually put a standard Boston Lager in my holiday season. I can get a goddamn Boston Lager any fucking time I want. Why would you put that in this holiday seasonal pack that I can only get once a year? God damn it. Anyway, what the fuck? Oh yeah. You cannot click on your abilities. You actually have to key map them. Now, if you're like an arena player or really just even remotely pro, you're already used to key mapping all of your abilities. But you know, if you're a freaking casual who has a relatively vanilla mouse, you may still be a fucking clicker. But, of course, console controllers don't have mouse buttons, so we all take it in the ass. Kind of like putting an everyday Boston Lager in a fucking Samuel Adams seasonal holiday pack. The last aspect of the user interface I want to talk about was the first-person perspective. Now, this is, obviously an Elder Scrolls staple. They did a pretty good job on it. The field of view was a little tight. It could use some kind of fisheye slider setting to maybe make it a little bit more viable or useful. And they need to refine the aiming with the crosshairs. But if they address these issues before release, this could become like one of the very badly needed signature features to distinguish this game. Moving on to combat. Woohoo! Melee combat actually did remind me very much of Skyrim, and that actually is a compliment this time. Every beta test I've ever been involved in, regardless of the game, has had some server lag, and I think a lot of the negative comments and awkwardness prescribed to the melee combat in ESO so far has been due to this lag. I see the potential there. They got it right in Skyrim. I have no reason to think that they're not going to get it right in ESO. So, other than the class structure, which we'll address later, I'm pretty confident this is actually going to be a fun aspect of the game. Now, because of the lag, though, ranged combat was a lot more enjoyable during the beta testing. Hold on here, beer clock. Bows tended to have frontal area of effect capabilities, very Guild War II reminiscent. Spells were smooth, somewhat fun to look at, and they actually had something I couldn't quite get enough testing in on, but they seemed to have some form of limited like heat-seeking capability, which brings up some interesting thoughts from a PvP perspective. Now, keep in mind, this is like, a theory born out of an assumption, derived from speculation with just very little observational evidence. Okay, so I'm guessing that unless you work for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, you have enough fucking chromosomes to know not to take this as gospel. We're all adults here. And if you're not an adult, get off my fucking lawn. But think this through. Right now, magical damage scales evenly, or from what I could see, evenly with melee combat. In the Elder Scrolls universe, you can cast while moving. Spells also seem to have a heat-seeking capability. It doesn't really take a 2600 plus arena multiglad to figure out that this could create like a serious competitive imbalance from a PvP perspective. It's also been my experience that when a game espouses large mass group combat in PvP, what they're really telling you is class balancing is a bitch, and we're just not going to do it. On the positive note, though, I did play both melee classes. One specialized on their ability to close gaps, the other specialized in their ability to bring you back to them. So mobility might not be a huge issue from a melee character's perspective. It's something to keep an eye on. One last thing about combat balance is the class system. Now, Bethesda has continued to insist that the class system will really only affect your ultimate ability and everything else will remain open. However, all things being equal, when you're talking about small unit PvP combat, that final ultimate ability variable is going to be what decides the equation. So if all weapons and armor are available to all players, and your ultimate ability is gap control, whereas mine is a heal or a stun, I simply need to mimic your combat style to render your ultimate ability useless. I can then pop my heal or stun at the appropriate time and end the fight with a predictable result, barring any kind of extreme RNG effect. If outside of PvP combat these choices become not much more than an aesthetic preference or an affectation, then it's not hard to imagine a serious class choice imbalance forming because people are looking to min-max their PvP viability. And finally, combat graphics. Now, graphics means different things to different people. And overall and background graphics aren't as important to me, but ability graphics and combat graphics are particularly immersive and I think can make or break a game. At launch, Rift was probably the best MMO I've ever played, and it's still, it's a fantastic game. It was well produced. Its problem was, though, that combat was extremely boring. You'd pop a cooldown and you really wouldn't even know. Whereas Guild War was somewhat the exact opposite. I didn't particularly like the gameplay, but man, when you popped a combat ability, you actually enjoyed what you saw. Because graphic output capabilities were restricted during the Elder Scrolls beta, it's hard to know where your combat graphics are fit on the scale. However, I would say this. There's about 4 months to release, and there's only so much you could do in that period of time. I can't think of anything Bethesda could do that would give them more bang for their buck than adding unique, immersive, and fun combat graphics. The last thing I want to cover in the review is questing in Elder Scrolls. The first thing you actually know about questing is that it appears to have 100% voiceover, which might be the single best thing about this game. When you're telling me, if you're going to say, hey, we're swinging with the big boys here, the first thing I ask myself is, okay, is this 100% voiceover? Star Wars really set the standard for this, and as gamers, I really don't want to go backwards here. If you're releasing a primetime game, it's got to have voiceovers. It's just not that hard to do. Overall, the quest presentation and style was based on the Guild Wars 2 model, with some nice use of Warcraft-style quest hubs sprinkled in to kind of move you from one large area to another without necessarily discouraging any voluntary map exploration. And that in that aspect, I think they did a pretty good job. Now, although the quests did tend to have more complexity and layers to them than your standard Warcraft quest, they lacked the dynamic mini-events that would happen at the end of so many Guild Wars 2 quest chains. The storytelling was average at best, and there was no feature or feel of questing in Elder Scrolls that would separate it or differentiate it from any other game on the market. So, overall, where does this leave us? As I mentioned in the beginning, Bethesda certainly isn't above releasing product that they know has issues or bugs. And anyone who's familiar with the DLC for Oblivion probably thinks that this new subscription model for ESO Online fits Bethesda's policy of, hey, you keep giving us money and we'll give you very little in return. But there is the simple fact that to date, every single Elder Scrolls title that has ever been delivered has been a damn solid game. Have you ever actually met someone who says, yeah, man, I just completely regret buying Skyrim? Or, yeah, I wish I would not have purchased Oblivion. Morrowind was the buggiest game in the series, yet if you ask most Elder Scrolls veterans, they'll tell you that was probably the funnest game in the series. Now, none of this, of course, hides the fact that in the 4 months until the release date, it's simply not going to be possible for Bethesda to release a game that's worthy of the $60 price point and $15 subscription fee. So I would say this: if you're undecided about this game, I can't see any way in which I could recommend this game to someone who hasn't already made the mental commitment to purchase it. In fact, I would probably recommend wait for the game to be out 3 or 4 months and see how hard Bethesda works to get the game up to speed. For those of us, including myself, who have already made the decision that they are going to buy the game, it's really about managing expectations. Understand this, with your eyes wide open, that you will be paying a premium for a subpar game and continuing to throw money at that game month after month based solely on the track record of its predecessors.